welcome to the Lines Podcast, a very special edition. It is the Open Championship 2023. Matt Brown, Steven Anders, John Hausbauer here, and we are going to try and make you some money this week, if at all humanly possible. We have had a pretty good golf season so far. If you've been over in the Discord, you've seen we've, listen, when we're not hitting the outrights, we're certainly at least making some money in the placement market stuff. So be sure, absolutely free. If you have not done that, head to thelines.com, upper right-hand corner. Up there, you can see the little icon and you can join, get in on the conversation. We're doing all of that. If you're watching us on the YouTube, go ahead, hit the subscribe button. You know you want to. It doesn't cost you a dime. We're just doing it for free for you here. So go ahead and do that. You're going to not only get golf content, but everything that we do throughout the course of the year. And if this is on the audio side, hit the pause button. Little 5-star stuff always helps us out a little bit. So John does an awesome preview. If you have not been to the Lines, if it's your first time being exposed to us, the link is in the description, but he's here with us, so we might as well go ahead and get the goods on all this, John. So what are we going to get this week from a course standpoint? I mean, again, we got links style golf last week, but it's not necessarily, it wasn't a true links course, but Royal Liverpool is definitely a true links course.
Yeah, for sure. And just to establish credibility from the top, I did spend a semester abroad in London, England. So I do
humble
consider
brag.
England
Listen,
to
look
be...
at that. Look, you see that, Steven? Look at that humble brag that we just got right there.
Yeah. I want people to know that I know
this guy.
I know England. So yeah, I consider England to be a second home. I would petition to put myself on the English Ryder Cup team. That's kind of the ties that I have.
Also, how bad the roster is this year.
Yes, correct. I would say, do you want me or Sepp Straka in the 12? I don't know. I think it's kind of a toss-up. But yes, Hoy Lake, Royal Liverpool Golf Club, our first time here since 2014 when Rory McIlroy won, and Rory McIlroy has not won a major since 2014. So obviously he is going to be the biggest storyline. Whenever you win the week prior and the prior tournament held at this course, you will naturally be one of the favorites. He's the odds-on favorite. And before Rory won here, it was Tiger Woods who won. So if that trend continues, I guess you just hand the jug to Scottie Scheffler, because it seems like the best player in the field just asserts his dominance at a course like this. But that's not really the way that links golf should be. There should be a little bit of randomness. The elements will come into play. The identity of Royal Liverpool is that it is so exposed to the coast and the elements. And if we know anything about links golf, it's that the elements ultimately dictate the conditions and the scoring opportunities. And if it's calm, it's gettable. And if it's anything more than a breeze, it is going to be a grind. I think we'll see a mix of both. Looking at the forecast, obviously encourage everybody recording this on Monday evening. So definitely encourage everybody to keep an eye on the forecast Tuesday, even Wednesday, before locking up your bets. I don't think I'll put any placements in until Wednesday, maybe Tuesday night or Wednesday. Definitely keeping a close eye on the T splits, see if there's any weather wave advantage. I think it's too early to say that for now. But it's obviously a week first and foremost, more than any other week on the schedule, to keep a very close eye on the weather, because there is an advantage to be had potentially if the weather is not affecting everybody in the field in the same way.
Steven, as we take a look at the odds board here, Rory McIlroy is your short shot. You can find him as high as plus 750 in the market, as low as plus 525 actually out there. Scottie Scheffler comes in second at high as plus 850, as low as 6-1. Jon Rahm, who we didn't see last week, sitting about 13-1 right now is the best number you can find on him. And then Cam Smith comes in, the only guy that is really under we can find, under the 20s that we can find out there. Smith coming in 18-1. Everyone else 22 or longer. That starts with Brooks Koepka, that you can find at 22 and longer. As you were going down the odds board here, and of course this has changed drastically over the course of the last month, and we should always say, like, whenever we go into these major tournaments, these majors odds get posted far earlier than the week-to-week tournaments. And so these things have the biggest chance to move, have the biggest swings throughout the course of when they open to when they actually go off. I mean, listen, you're looking at Ricky Fowler right now, who the best in market that you can find is 25-1. I personally have a 37-1 ticket on Ricky Fowler, and I'm sure had you made it a little bit earlier than that, you probably were getting 45, 50, maybe even 60-1 on him. So lots of changes here, but did anything jump out to you whenever you were looking at the odds board?
Well, since we're all humble bragging, I didn't spend a semester in England, but I do have 100-1 Ricky Fowler ticket for this tournament. So
there you go. So
perfect
so
example. So, but that doesn't help anybody on this show. So,
well, guess what? I didn't spend a semester in England, nor do I have 100-1 ticket on a race. So I don't have anything to brag about. So we'll just, we'll go on from there.
Yeah, we're gonna need a resume after this show. Just to see.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's start with the top of the board because I disagree with Rory McIlroy being the favorite. I think this is major recency bias off of him winning the Scottish last week. I think if you look at the overall stats for this year, the favorite should start and end with Scottie Scheffler. That's the discussion. He has been Tiger Woods at his peak levels good from tee to green. We talked about this at length in the U.S. Open podcast a little while ago. And if he has one of his better putting weeks, he should win this tournament by multiple strokes. There is, to John's point, a bit of randomness when we're talking about links golf. But if Scottie Scheffler is not the favorite to win this tournament, then there's a trickle-down effect to some other markets as well. And I am going to bet Scottie Scheffler. There's a plus 100 still out there on Scottie to finish top 10 in this tournament. The last time he finished outside the top 10 was in April, and he finished 11th. I mean, it's just an amazing stretch he's on. Since October, he's been outside the top 10 3 times, and the worst finish of those 3 was 12th place. So it's just incredible the run that Scottie is on. The odds
he has not been outside the top 12 since October of 2022.
Amazing.
If that tells anybody anything.
The fall swing, which nobody cares about, and players are like testing stuff. And if he was testing stuff, he still finished really highly. So for me, plus money on Scottie Scheffler at top 10 at this point is a misprice. It's not my philosophy to bet guys shorter than 10-1 in an outright market, so he's not going to make my card. But I want some type of exposure to this Tiger Woods-like heater that he is on, so I'm going to bet him top 10.
Yeah, if you take a look, I mean, we could talk about Scottie Scheffler basically for the whole podcast if we wanted to. You go all the way back to Bay Hill. Bay Hill's a T4. He loses a stroke to the field putting. You go to the match play. He finishes outright 4th. He loses 2.6 strokes to the field putting. At Augusta, he's a T10, losing 3.9. You go a little bit further back to Colonial. He's a T3, losing 4.5. Muirfield, an outright 3, losing 8.5. And even last week at the Renaissance Club at T3, he loses 2.2 to the field putting. I mean, this guy, if he even putts at level, he's winning another 3 or 4 tournaments basically this season. So I don't make a practice of betting these short shots outright, especially when you can get a top 10 for not really that much cheaper than you can get for a guy to win outright. So he's been a print fest. Have you been doing that all season long? And I don't see any reason why to think that Scottie Scheffler in this field won't be able to kind of replicate what he's done, as we mentioned, since October of 2022.
Yeah, I think when we talk about randomness at this course, it's random in the sense that if you play the 17th hole at noon and somebody else plays the 17th hole at 3, you might be hitting like 3 different clubs. It's based on the severity of the wind, the direction of the wind, and that may give you an advantage depending on tee times and things of that nature. But if you hit good shots, they're going to be rewarded here. And this is not the type of links course where you hit it in the center of the fairway and it catches this giant slope and it kicks left into a pop bunker. Like, by and large, the hazards are in front of you. You know where you can and can't miss. And if you have a good caddy with you and you devise a game plan and you execute that game plan, you're going to do well here. So this is not, when I talk about randomness, this is not like I want to bet all the 100-1 long shots like I would in a putting contest. I do expect the cream to rise to the top. I do think Scottie Scheffler will be in the hunt come Sunday. The one thing I would say that, I bet Scottie Scheffler on a near single bullet at the U.S. Open, and the reason why I don't feel inclined to do that this week is that this course really takes the creativity out of the skill sets that you need. You're not hitting a swooping fade, a swooping draw. You're not curving it around trees. You're not like hitting off of like a weird down slope like you would at Augusta where you need to hit these feel shots. It's very flat and it's very straight and it's right in front of you. So I think he's not necessarily gaining significantly on the field with all the shots in his bag with the layout that we have at Hoy Lake.
So I do want to get y'all's opinion on the type of golfer you were looking at this week. I'm sure, we're all golf geeks here, but to kind of share our golf geekdom, I'm sure you guys watch all the flyovers and things just like I do. And you kind of look at these holes and you start to get the breakdowns of things. And I think, John, when you look at this and as we start to build our models, and Stephen, I'm curious as to how you built your model as well. The thing I kept noticing is these bunkers, they strategically placed them kind of in this area to where they estimated where a lot of people are driving the ball. And it's like, if you are not super long, then you better be pretty friggin' accurate, or you're going to end up in one of these bunkers in the middle of the fairway. And like, depending on where the ball ends up in the bunker, it could be a full on penalty stroke, because you might only be able to kind of chip out of there and stuff. So it's like, I factored in driving distance fairly heavily for me this week, because if you can fly at 290 in the air, you're going to miss these like 275, 280, 285-ish pot bunkers in the middle of these fairways. And I actually think that's going to present a really, really big advantage this week to completely take those out of play.
Yeah, and they made renovations to this course in 2020, I believe. They made a concerted effort since the 2014 Open here that Rory won to make those bunkers more of a threat, more of a factor of a decision that you have to make if you're going to go for it or lay back. And I think they've done a good job of that. As you said, looking at the flyovers, they are going to be right in that like 300-yard sweet spot where you have to make a decision. I think total driving is paramount this week. And the number one thing that I put a weight on is guys who, with driver in hand and hitting a 300-yard shot, know exactly where not to miss it. I think this is not a course like a Florida swing where you have like water on the left and water on the right, or water on the right and severe penalty on the left. The tradition, like mainly on this course, you can't miss right, but you can bail out a little bit left, or you can't miss left, you can bail out a little bit right. So guys who can mitigate their misses, but also hit it long, because there's 7 par 4s over 450 here. There's 2 600 plus par 5s. The par 3s are long, and that's not even taking wind into account. If any of those holes have wind in your face, you could add 100 yards to some of these holes.
Yeah.
So distance, important. Can't spray it here either, which I think makes it a great test as a major.
Stephen, how much did you weight driving distance this week? And one of the things that I always tell people, and look, I'm a terrible golfer, but if you look at these guys that are actually good, even if you're clubbing down, right? Like, even if there's a choice being made to club it down, the guys that are longer, or the guys that are more accurate, 9 times out of 10 are still going to be that with a 3-wood, or be that with a 5-wood, or whatever they decide to go off the tee with, and all that. So it's like, when I'm looking at this driving stuff, like I kind of take that into consideration as well, whether if they decide to play a whole smart, air quote, smart, whatever, like, me, never, I'm just always just, grip it and rivet or whatever. I'm never playing a whole smart, but if they decide to play a whole smart, it's still a completely different animal for these guys that are longer, that are more accurate. And especially if you have the combination of the two, then that's the kind of the ultimate key here. What did you do with the model, Stephen, from a driving and at least from an accuracy standpoint?
I definitely have driving distance in there. I did not weight it as much as I did for the US Open, considering that LA Country Club had some of the widest fairways you'll ever see for a major championship, even though of all the talk of rollouts and it might go into the rough and whatnot. I mean, I was frankly feeling pretty fortunate that Wyndham Clark cashed that bet for me, because I thought he sliced it onto the driving range on the 72nd hole and it somehow held the fairway. So I don't think that's going to be the case at Royal Liverpool. I think distance will be an advantage, to your point. I don't think it's an eliminator for an outright consideration if they are not one of the longest players here. So the way I'm kind of looking at it, US Open, I think I had like 25% in my model for driving distance. And this year I have it in there, or this event, I have about 10%, but fairways gained is more heavily weighted. So I kind of have like a total driving situation going on in what I built, but weighted a little more heavily to accuracy. But to your point, I will also concede that if the wind starts whipping here a little bit and you're going into the wind on some of these holes, it could be a disqualifier for some of these short hitters if they can't even reach some of these greens, or if, Rory McIlroy on the 72nd hole of the Scottish Open is hitting a freaking 1-iron into the green, and he's one of the longest hitters off the tee. I mean, Lee Trevino said if you're in a thunderstorm and you're afraid of lightning, hold up a 1-iron because not even God can hit a 1-iron. And Rory's hitting this into the green to win a tournament. So what are other guys hitting? Driver off the deck and winding up 30 yards short if there's a stiff wind you're hitting into. So it doesn't look too, again, very early forecast, but it doesn't look too bad on Thursday and Friday. But Saturday and Sunday, we're looking at some potentially sustained winds in the teens. And obviously in the UK, if you've ever been there, you know that could mean some even heavier gusts, which could make a difference. So I think it's important. I don't think it's vital.
So if you guys out there are making your models on your own, again, I will give credit where credit is due. I use 3 different sites out there to build models and take kind of the consensus of them. And that leads me towards a play. I run a model on Data Golf. I run a model on Fantasy National. I run a model on Rick Rungood. So look, I'm giving the shout out to all 3 of those guys. I'm not a programmer. So when I say I'm running a model, it's not stuff that I'm putting in myself. I don't know how
same
to do
here.
That stuff, but
shout out to all the software providers out there. They're all fantastic.
So like I get so many people who are like, yeah, man, when I'm modeling, and they'll be like, oh, can you teach me how to model? I'm like, no, I cannot actually. I cannot at all. I can tell you how to plug stuff into a model. I cannot.
I can teach you how to pay $200 a year and become a better golf better.
Yeah. So again, what I do is I use 3 different ones, algorithms. I think if the algorithms agree on a player, then that at least is kind of pointing me in the right direction. So that's kind of how I go about all that. So if you're building your own models out there, I can give you kind of what I was looking at. John can kind of give you what he was looking at. I was pretty heavy off the tee. I think, again, if off the tee, driving distance, driving accuracy are super, super important to me. I'm super heavy on that this week as well. I did approach and also did just like recent results approach to kind of see which guys are kind of coming in, really striking the ball good, because this could be one of those deals where, with the big greens, with the stuff, like I don't want guys having to, putt from a mile away. And so I do have that in there. We already talked about the distance and accuracy. I have sand saves, obviously, just as a part of all of this, because there are going to be some guys that are going to have hitting out of sand. So I did put that in there. Strokes gained 450 to 500, proximity from 175 to 200, and then 200 to 225. And then outside of that, I did do a little lag putting, because since it is big greens, I don't want dudes who aren't at least going to give themselves kind of a tap in on that next putt. So I did approach putt performance in the model for me as well this week. So those are the stats that I'm pretty heavy on. I did a couple little tiebreaker stuff where I just put it at like 1% if I was kind of hung up on a player. Opportunities gained. So if a guy just, if I'm trying to lean one way or another on a guy, if a guy's a little bit closer and giving himself more opportunities to make birdies, I did put that in there, but not weighed heavily enough for me to really tell people to put that into the model. John, what did you kind of land on this week?
Yeah, I think a lot of overlap there. Performance in majors, I think, is one that maybe I put in a mixed condition model to differentiate what I'm looking at a little bit more. It's hard to rely on a stat model in links golf, because I wrote about this in my preview, but a lot of these guys over the last 12 rounds played the John Deere Classic, the Rocket Mortgage, and the Travelers. And I don't necessarily think that the way that they hit their irons from 150 to 200 is going to translate to anything on these courses. I also don't know if bogey avoidance matters when you're playing a bunch of birdie fest going into this. So that's why I leaned a lot on major performance. I think there's a lot of characteristics of this golf course that are going to make it difficult, and put a emphasis on the same areas that are important at other majors. And that's that long par 4s, the 450 plus par 4 is very important. Long par 5s, par 5 scoring from 600 to 650. I think you can actually get some separation from the field here. There's some bombers who 600 yards is reachable for them. And there's guys like Matt Kuchar who are actually great at par 5 scoring when it's a 3-shot hole, because they're really elite with wedges. So I think those whole ranges are important to me. Double bogey avoidance combined with bogey avoidance is something I put in here again. I think bogey avoidance is a little bit of a flawed stat, because if you're playing easy courses, you're just not going to make as much bogeys. But long term and folding in doubles, I think doubles is where you're bringing in, like, there was a hazard in play on this hole, and I knew it was there, and I still hit it into that hazard. So anecdotally, like somebody who does not make doubles, I feel like that translates well here. Russell Henley, interesting enough, was number 1 in double bogey avoidance. That actually makes sense to me, because he's so accurate with the driver and the approach. So I think that's a specialty stat I'm looking for. And then, like you said, long irons approach, I'm putting off the tee number 1. And then all of those scrambling statistics. And I have weighted putting of 3-putt avoidance, putting on slow greens, which is very unique to links golf. It's something you can pick up on select PGA Tour courses, and then just total overall putting combined into that.
So, Stephen, if you weren't as heavy on distance, that percentage had to go somewhere else. Where do you differentiate from John and I this week?
Again, a lot of overlap, but heavy on strokes gain approach, and the one kind of yardage range in particular, scoring on, John kind of mentioned this, par 4s from 450 to 500. 7 of the 18 holes on this course, at least on the scorecard, are within either in that range or within a couple yards of it. So can you do damage on those holes, or at least avoid disaster was a big portion of it. So I would say if I'm picking one thing where I took the driving distance away, I'd probably put it towards that. But overall in a major, just trying to have the most well-rounded model I can. There's some weeks where I don't have putting in there. I have very little strokes gained around the green because it's a birdie fest, and I just want guys that are hitting or getting opportunities. With the uncertainty with the weather and just the nature of links golf, I just want to have as well-rounded of a situation as I can. But certainly, unlike a lot of PGA Tour events, emphasizing accuracy off the tee a little bit more than driving distance there. But I guess, better minds can differ on that because we disagree a little bit there.
So let's get into kind of where our models split out some stuff and what we ended up putting on our card. We don't talk about picks beforehand, so I do want to bring up a player, and if you guys have it, then we can discuss it. And if not, then we can just kind of have a roundtable here. But we know Cam Smith wins this last year. Mm-hmm. Do either of you have him on your card this week?
No,
I'm actually hard fade on Cam Smith and looking.
So that's where I was going with this, right? So he's actually a target for me this week, and I'm going to be going after him as much as humanly possible because I think people are going to look. The win on Live, the win here last, the win on, at least at the Open, not here, but like the win in the Open last year, all of that. And I think people might get wrapped up in that a little bit too much and not really look at what we are looking at, which is this is a guy that's not long and he's not accurate. So like he doesn't have either one of the two things that we're looking at off of the tee. And last year it was like the perfect storm too, because you could miss by 30. You just end up on another fairway. Like you can just like go and like you can play from anywhere and all that. And like that fits his game perfectly fine. That's not going to be the case this week. You could miss. You could end up in one of these bunkers. You could end up in really bad fescue. There's actually a couple different holes, John, correct me if I'm mistaken, but like not too far off, there's actually some out of bounds as well, like on some of these holes too, where he could find trouble. So I think he's a super hard fade for me this week. Like my number one target in head-to-heads is going to be against Cam Smith. And I'm not going to say I'm going to play everybody against him, but so long as it is a guy that I'm not down on, I'm probably going to be going after him pretty hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love Cam Smith at the U.S. Open. I won a good amount of money. A top live player. He cashed on top 10. He cashed on. And that's a generous fairway where you can spray it out. You don't really have to worry about being too accurate. That's how he won at St. Andrews. So I think that's exactly the juxtaposition that we're working here when we talk about year over year Open, is that we're going from wide open, you can't miss the fairways, to extremely tight internal out of bounds, like a yard or two off of the fairway where precision is paramount. And he's not even that accurate with less than driver. I think that Sawgrass win statistically is a little misleading because he lost about 5 or 6 strokes off the tee and gained about 10 putting. So he didn't really play Sawgrass the way that it's intended to.
Yeah.
If you gain 10 strokes putting on any course, you have a chance to win. It's just not very sustainable to expect him to do that again. So I feel like we're on the same page with Cam Smith. Target against him. I think a Brooks versus Cam Smith is a market that books will probably post, and I would love to get a piece of Brooks in that.
Steven, let's get to looking at your card, my friend. Let's see what outrights you've already got in the account. And listen, we're doing this pretty early in the week, so with that being said, we might make some additions to the card. This is yet another reason why you want to be a member of the Discord. Again, headlines.com, upper right-hand corner. You can go ahead and get in for free. So any additions we make, we post our full cards in there every week. So just be sure and do that. But this is at least where we stand on Monday in the evening.
For sure. Definitely fading top of the board. So just trying to beat the top three names of McIlroy, Scheffler, and Rahm at the prices we're being offered. Also, Cam Smith being fourth is going to give me a little bit better odds as well on some of these guys down the board. To be honest with you, got this idea from John's preview post, and I think he's dead on with it. Brooks Koepka, anything that starts with a 2, I'm not going to call it a misprice, but I'd say it's, a larger number than it should be. I know that his major wins have come in the U.S. Open and the PGA Championship, but he's been no slouch at the Open Championship either before he had his injury situations. He has 4 top 10s at the Open Championship, and he also had a T4 and a T6 in 2019 and 2021, respectively. He knows how to play this style of golf as well, even though he hasn't won the Open Championship yet. I just think when he was in his prime and winning multiple majors over that couple of year stretch, his number didn't start with a 2. His number was sometimes shorter than 15-1 in that elite tier. So I'm going to take advantage of that, considering I think there are some red flags with guys that are above him. And that's where I'm going to start my card. Admittedly, I was down to him or Victor Hovland in this to start my card. And Vic just kind of didn't quite make the cut there. I think if he is going to win a major, the Open makes a lot of sense as his first at some point. So that will be my biggest regret, is if Vic Hovland wins, but he didn't make my card. And then we'll get into the rest of my card in a little bit here. But with so many futures, I was able to lock in on some guys at numbers that don't exist anymore. It allowed me to go with a much longer card than I typically would. So we'll get in, Ricky Fowler. I can't advise betting him shorter than 25-1 right now, even though I got him at 100-1. But he still is finishing pretty high in all of the variations of the modeling that I've done this week. So wouldn't shock me in the least if Fowler wins, but the best of the number is long gone on him.
John, let's get to your outright card and let's talk about some of the guys that you have towards the top here.
Yeah, I guess just to start with Brooks, it's probably wrote more words about why I think Brooks is set up perfectly for this course in the spotlight feature of the article than I can remember writing about any given player. There are about 10 reasons I can think of why this course is a perfect setup for Brooks Koepka. And I thought that after he won the PGA Championship that we were done seeing the 20s, as Steven mentioned.
Yeah, me too,
I thought
man.
that in majors it became a big 4 after that week, and you were never going to see a 20 in the immediate next 5 majors on Brooks along with Rory, Scotty, and Rahm. And the number is moving. It's getting better by the week. It started at 20, and I thought I better jump on this. And thankfully, I was able to cash out because you can get a 25-1 still to this moment in like a Bet Rivers Enhanced, which is legal in the great state of New Jersey. So I'm on Brooks Koepka at 25-1. I've missed out on every Brooks week, all 5 of the prior ones. So I'm not somebody who screams from the mountaintops and has like this great history betting Brooks. I'm usually one who goes into a major and finds all the reasons to resist betting Brooks. And
nobody
I
has,
cannot
for
think
the
of
record,
one.
for the record, John, nobody has more Brooks Koepka pain than me. Had him against Rahm at the Masters this year. Had him and he lost to Phil frickin' Mickelson at the PGA Championship. Both 50-1 numbers, win shortly after a major at like half the price when I didn't bet them. So one time, Brooks, please.
Yeah, and mind you, like the 2021 PGA Championship at Kiowa, maybe one of the better examples of wind exposed driver accuracy prevalent majors. And now Phil is obviously not that Phil was a contender going into that week, but I would be shocked if Phil Mickelson performed the same way this week. And nobody looked good in that PGA Championship, with the exception of Brooks and Phil for the most part. So I think that's an important thing to look at when we look at just putting in the wind. That was severely affected. A lot of guys commented afterwards that they just were not used to reading greens where the wind was going to affect it. And that's absolutely going to be the case at Portrush. So anywhere where we're seeing super windy coastal slow green putting, I'm going to reference that. And Brooks has passed that test as well. So definitely starting with Brooks. And I'm still trying to make a decision at the top of my board. I've essentially left it where I'm either going to bet John Rahm at about 14-1, or I'm going to bet both Patrick Cantlay and Colin Morikawa. I'm going to allow the tee times to try to sway me tomorrow and see if we can get any sort of weather advantage, wave advantage. If anything looks dubious with Rahm and I'm not loving his wave split, then I may go the other route. But I am kind of leaning towards John Rahm in another example of trying to figure out why the odds are drifting in the other direction. I think he stacks up pretty similarly in terms of recent form, recent results, as he did going into the Masters, where he was definitely the third guy. There were two favorites ahead of him. At the Masters, he was 9-1, so it wasn't a number that I was going to jump on. He obviously won the Masters, coming off a very disappointing, essentially a missed cut at the match play the week before, where I actually bet him in that, and he got swept. Lost to Billy Horschel, who hasn't looked like a professional golfer in over a year. So he looked completely lost and bounced back just fine off of that. He missed the cut at the Travelers in his previous start before this, but that doesn't seem to matter with John Rahm. Obviously, a devout European, very, very into his European lineage. The Ryder Cup means a lot to him. Has always played well in links golf, has a couple top tens to his name. I know it would mean a lot to him to have a claret jug, and his career would feel incomplete without one. A little, I don't know if I'm taking the easy way out by trying to bet two of the three major winners already this season. But I do think there is something to being able to prove that you're able to close the door in high pressure situations. And there's a lot of nervy shots down the stretch of this. The last three holes here are no joke, and you have to really step up and hit tough shots. So that is leading me towards a more concentrated card of proven winners.
Matt, let me sneak in a quick follow-up here. I imagine, John, I suspect that you're waiting for the tee times and the potential wave splits because you are at least a little bit concerned about Rahm's accuracy off the tee and the way he sprayed it at times this year. Because, yes, he won the Masters, but also a course with some of the widest fairways of any event all year. Is that a fair situation or how to describe it?
A little bit. I also think the softness of the course is going to affect it as well, because if we're in a situation where it rained today on Monday, and if it continues to rain or just not get sunlight, then we're going to get a softer course that requires more carry distance, does not allow you to hit these sort of runners and burners off the tee, less than driver. And that I actually think plays into Rahm's advantage. Obviously he's not the best in terms of like fairways hit. But that's because, he knows that he can hit the driver and not have crazy dispersion. So I don't consider Rahm to be this like spray it all over the place kind of driver. Total strokes getting off the tee, he's fine. Distance, obviously good. I would like to see the driving accuracy look a little bit better, but it's not enough to scare me off in these conditions when I've seen him put some pretty good results together in past Open Championships.
Well, considering I was sweating an outright on him earlier this year after he got a lucky bounce off of a couple trees and a free drop in a parking lot, I hope he loses a ball in the fescue just between us three.
Steven, give us the rest of your outright card.
So yeah, Brooks Koepka at the top. I would, if Fowler gets off to a little bit of a slow start, I might look for a live number on him. And then I got a bunch of, I'm kind of waiting. I have room to go up to 4 units and have somebody in that 35 to 55 to 1 range. And I think there's a lot of attractive names there that were kind of surfacing in the top 15 every way I split it here. So I think Justin Rose is an interesting candidate here. He has a lot of Open Championship experience. He's having his best year in a long time this year. Obviously very accurate. The win at Pebble in a weak field, but also some contending as well in stronger fields. Colin Morikawa as well, obviously doesn't have the distance, but as straight as they come. And even if there's a bunker in the middle of the fairway, I mean, he's the kind of guy that can just pick a spot out there and put it there. He's one of, if not the most accurate off the tee, even though he sacrifices distance. Jordan Spieth is interesting to me, even though the form has been bad. I think this number has split because of the recent form, but it's really hard to argue against his history of links golf. He has a top 20 finish at the Open in 6 of his last 7 appearances. That is really impressive. So maybe not a win bet, but I certainly would consider a plus 140, including ties at BetMGM for a top 20 finish for Jordan Spieth. And then I think that's about it in that range I would look at. The other guy who's popping for me that has not had good form recently is Tony Finau. And I think the price is right if you want to take a shot at him. Obviously has not won a major, but 55-1 is a heck of a lot longer than I thought we'd get on him when, he's playing at his best. So that's
I can't get there. He has been so terrible lately. It's just dude, he is 7th in one version of mine. He is 9th in another. He's 6th in another. And
the results are terrible.
Yeah. And I can't click the button. So that'll be my, if he wins, I'll feel like an idiot guy, because it's like typically if he's that high and the odds are that far off, to me, that would be an auto bet for me. But I just can't get there.
Similar situation with Wyndham Clark too, like another guy that's surfaced a lot in the model.
We'll get to my outrights here, Steven. Why don't we just chill the F out real quick? And
this is going to be interesting because I pulled Clark off my card today, so I want to hear this.
Yeah. So it's funny because a couple of guys John talked about already made my card that he was considering. And then same with you, Steven. So Victor Hovland's the shortest guy on my card, 25-1. Look, if we're talking about elite drivers of the ball with distance and accuracy, I mean, he's right there when it comes to all that. And we understand the short game, the wedges, all of that stuff is a problem for him. But listen, the good thing about this course is as long as you can keep it in the fairway and you can do it, he could bump 7-irons up there if he wants to. I mean, seriously, he can not even put wedges in his hands if he doesn't want to do that. I mean, hell, if he's close enough, there's putting options, right? I mean, seriously, I know it sounds silly, but he can keep these wedges and all these things that have been real problems for him kind of out of his hand. And so
Golf.
I'll go ahead and hope that it all kind of culminates this week. So I've got Vic Hovland on my card, and I did go ahead and play Colin. I mean, if you look at the stat profile for Colin, I mean, especially what we got at Rocket Mortgage where he T2'd, right? I mean, 3.4 strokes off the tee, 5.9 approach, 2.7 around the green. He actually gained putting, 3.3 as well. I mean, this is kind of what we're looking for peak when it comes to him. Yeah, he missed the cut at the Travelers, but you go back to the U.S. Open where he gained 2.2 off the tee, another 5.5 approach. This is the type that's the Colin Morikawa, right? That we're looking for. We're always going to be a little iffy with the putter, but hell, he gained with the putter at the U.S. Open as well. And so
that's what caught my attention, Matt. 3 straight events where he's now gaining strokes putting. And if he's doing that, he's going to contend.
Yeah. And so for me, it's just at the odds. I mean, you can still find a 35-1 out there on Colin Morikawa. And for me, that number just doesn't match up where he kind of fits in all this. So did play him. I mentioned the 37-1 on Ricky that I got about 3 weeks ago. That's down to 25. My only advice with Ricky would be this. If you want to play Ricky, you better play him as soon as you hear this podcast, because that number is only going to go down. He's the most popular dude that's going to every casual guy that comes in and bets last minute on Wednesday night for this is going to bet Ricky Fowler. I mean, it's going to drop off the 20s into
he's 12-1 at one book right now.
Yeah. I mean, my only thing, if you're making the bet just to root for a dude because you want to have a Ricky ticket, make it now, because that number is not going up. I mean, he is going to get every casual bet. And look, whatever, it's great. I'm glad Ricky's playing well, and I'm glad he's the face of basically golf right now. But yeah, it's only going to go the opposite direction. So I did play Wyndham Clark, and there's a 65-1 that's available out there on Wyndham Clark. Listen, I know he's won twice already this year, and I was if you look at what this guy's doing, I mean, especially where he can showing up in the model. I mean, dude, he's 10th in my 36 round. He is 8th in he's 7th in my 24 round. And it's just, I can't deny the fact that this guy's playing some of the best, most consistent golf on tour right now. And look, I get it. It's going to be hard to win 3 times in a year. We've seen people do it before. It's not to say that it can't be done. And obviously, I don't think that the odds match up to where he is showing up from statistically what I'm looking for this week, right, on Wyndham Clark. So I do have a Wyndham Clark ticket. I have a 100-1 on Sam Burns, and I know y'all are both going to giggle because I know
Birds
Burns more than any human being on the face of the planet. But that being said, bear with me here. Sam Burns at the Genesis gained 3.4 off the tee. He gained 1.4 around the green. He gained 3.3 putting. He just lost on approach. That's typically not Sammy's game, really. If you look the 4 tournaments prior, he gained all on approach. He is always going to be volatile off the tee. But the thing is that the number kind of reflects that right now. So, like, I'm willing to take on more variance and take on more risk the longer the number gets. Like, there's 100-1 available here in Vegas. There's still a 70-1 available rest of country on Sam Burns. And I think that at that point, you kind of embrace that, hey, if he's bad off the tee in this tournament, no shot whatsoever. If he is good off the tee in this tournament, considering what else he brings to the table, then I think this is going to be pretty interesting for him, certainly at the number that we get. And look, all you really are looking for once you have a 70, 80-1 ticket in your account is for the guy to be in a position to make you some money come Sunday, right? I mean, because we can always find ways to turn that type of ticket into profit come Sunday. So I do have that. The only other guy that I'm considering, since y'all guys did put out a who are we considering type deal, is I'm looking at Cam Young, and I know the win equity on Cam Young is not there. It's just we're looking at 70-1 out there on him, 65-ish, 70-1. If I want a long and straight guy, I mean, this is a long and straight guy. He's gained in 8 of the 9 last tournaments off the tee and typically gaining multiple strokes off the tee on the field. The around the green's all right. I mean, the putting's just terrible, right? I mean, that's just all there is to it. He can't putt at all. But I mean, can he catch fire for 4 rounds? I don't know, but it just that's the consideration. It's not in the account quite yet. I don't know if either one of you guys looked at all at Cam Young.
I have fond memories of his first round lead at the Open last year. That was the one good thing. I didn't hit Cam Smith with the rest of the entire golf betting world, but I did get my Cam Young first round leader. So fond memories there. I am still considering going back to him in a first round leader, and he was one of the guys when we talk about total driving who stands out there. So I think you're onto something there. Adding Paul Tesori hasn't paid immediate dividends, but I think a course like this where you need the experience, he's been on Webb Simpson's bag for plenty of Open Championships in the past. And I think that will be an asset to him and a change since his success at last year's Open. So he's definitely somebody I'm considering for sure. And just to go back to a couple of your other points with Wyndham Clark, I don't know if you guys saw Michael Kim's tweet today, but a very insightful recap of being on the course and his initial takeaways. Definitely encourage everybody to check that out. It's one of those like 1,000-character tweets, very, very thorough. But he said the tee shots remind him of a combination of LACC and Quail Hollow, which is exactly what you want to hear as a Wyndham Clark bettor. Obviously, 2 places that he has won on the PGA Tour. The only reservation I had with Wyndham Clark, the reason I wasn't a full go, is he lost strokes putting at the Open last year and at both of his first 2 Scottish Open appearances. And putting is kind of his bread and butter. So that gave me a little bit of pause that somebody who's the
that was before the Odyssey friggin' jailbird. I mean, jailbreak, whatever the hell it is. Like that was before the Odyssey. Like we all know that the Odyssey just makes the putts for you. You don't have to actually be good at putting. You just swing it and the ball goes in the hole.
Listen, as somebody who bet Wyndham Clark last week for his T25, where he lost close to 2 strokes putting, I can confirm it. There are some strokes that don't find the cup. If he manages to overcome that and win the Open, I will buy myself an Odyssey putter. I'll go on record as saying that.
All right, guys, let's talk about a few that we didn't bet on the way out of here, just because there are going to be some people that are curious about some of these other names towards the top. And let's at least kind of rapid fire this. Tyrrell Hatton, a guy that was super popular last week. Tommy Fleetwood, of course, several good finishes recently. Xander, as we know, a winner last year at the Scottish. We've got Shane Lowry. We've got Matt Fitzpatrick. All these guys that, sometime or another we have all kind of bet somewhere along the way. Your thoughts, just kind of rapid fire, Stephen, on any of those. Did any of those guys make your even consideration? Were any of them fades for any specific reason?
Considered Lowry, but again, win equity. He seems to just be a guy that contends all the time, or finishes highly, but doesn't really contend all that often. Maybe a first round leader consideration. Tyrrell Hatton, I used to find entertaining with how irritable he is and how frustrated he gets, and I'm kind of getting tired of it. You'd think a guy that grew up in England playing links golf would have a little bit more patience with the game of golf, but it seems like when he gets a little bit of bad luck that goes his way with the conditions, he just blows up, and I'm not sure that's really an equation for winning the Open Championship. So, on top of that, Tommy Fleetwood, listen, I like the guy. It'd be an awesome story if he won the Open, but has had chance after chance to close out tournaments and hasn't been able to do it. So you have to take a stand at some point when you're filling out a golf outright card. And if Tommy Fleetwood wins a major, then I tip my cap and move on to the next one and just say congratulations, but he will not be on my card.
John, any of those guys that you considered, or any of those guys that you might even be targeting for any reason?
Yeah, I think I'm ultimately drawing the line of I want a past major champion. I want somebody who, I just think the closing stretch is so nervy. There's so much internal out of bounds, which we haven't talked too much about that, but it's like, it looks like it's just rough a couple feet off the fairway and it's out of bounds. It's a stroke penalty. You got to move it out of there. So that's going to be unnerving, I think, for a lot of players. And it's any circumstance. We saw with Wyndham Clark on the 18th at LACC, like, you're looking for a place to bail out with those nerves. And that's just not here. So I want somebody with that mentality. They've done it before. They don't need this. They've done it before. They've won a major. Their life's not going to change significantly if they win this or not. It's just another major on my resume. So, guys like Patrick Cantlay, I'm leaning away from now because for whatever reason, he just hasn't seemed to close the door. Still love him. Love the fit. Great off the tee. Should play well. Will be a top 10, top 20 consideration, DFS play, all that good stuff. But outright win equity, that's kind of where I draw the line on a player like him. Same thing with Fleetwood. I worry about coming down the stretch if he can close it out. Matthew Fitzpatrick, I don't know. He's obviously the U.S. Open winner. I don't know if you guys saw quotes from him this week. He essentially said, "Don't bet me. I don't play well at the Open and my form's not good." So take with that as you will. I'm going to take him at his word and not play him. So I guess he would be one of my fades for that reason alone. I believe his brother did auto qualify for this though. So I think he will be just a little bit motivated to not miss the cut, let's say, but I'm not going to beat him outright.
If he misses the cut, he should go caddy for his brother if he makes the cut. That'd be cool.
The only other interesting one to me, and I just wish the odds were a little bit longer, and that's not to say that it's not that he's not going to make my card, is Dustin Johnson. And the thing with him is like, lack of data, right? Like we love running our data stuff. We love running our model. We love being able to like point to reasons why we want to bet someone. And with the lack of tracking every stroke at Live, it's kind of a leap of faith type thing for me. But when we talk about the mentality and the stuff that we're kind of liking from, John, you just went into it about the stuff. Like if you and I have a dude that doesn't care about anything, like Dustin Johnson doesn't care about anything, right? Like if he has to, like 18, you are not going to have any nerves whatsoever with that dude. I don't know if he's ever been nervous about anything his whole life. And so, if he's kind of there, I'm going to feel stupid if I don't have him on my card. It's just, look, we're talking 33-ish to 1, and it's a big leap of faith on a guy that I don't have a lot of data points to kind of point towards.
Matt, I got to give you two more names that, again, speaking of not having data to back it up, that I still fired on, and they're at long numbers. The first is Tom Kim, who is 90 to 1. I think he's not peaking because he had such a long stretch of just poor putting and he's not great around the green. And he also had a stretch where he just couldn't figure out his irons after that's his bread and butter that led to his rise last year. But has done very well with links golf in 2 appearances at the Scottish Open. At the Travelers in the US Open, gained more than 5 strokes on approach. So I think he's kind of figured that out. And at such a young age, I think he's a guy who has handled nerves pretty well in big situations, including getting a win on the PGA Tour twice already. The other name I'll mention here that is not backed up by data, but just my eyes tell me that if this thing gets crazy UK type open weather and it just gets more and more difficult, you can call this recency bias to bet Robert McIntyre after what we saw at the Scottish Open, but he also finished top 10 in his first 2 Open championships before last year's Open, where it was the easiest conditions maybe ever for the Open at St. Andrews, with crazy double wide fairways, no wind, and crazy rollout. We're just turned into a putting contest. But in actual traditional Open conditions, for a very young player to finish top 10 in his first 2 Open championships, and then to go out and basically need Rory McIlroy to hit some Hall of Fame level shots to beat him in some of the toughest conditions, where everybody on the course was shooting over par, and he goes out and shoots well under par. That's a guy I want on my card this week. So that's another one I just took a shot on.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm going to have like a super long. I mean, I guess, hell, weirdly enough, I guess Sam Burns is considered a super long shot. I have 100-1, but I mean, I don't think I'm going to have kind of like that unproven guy on the card for me this week. I just don't think it's applicable to this specific tournament. But, look, if you want to have some lunch money on one of those like bombs, I'm never going to talk anybody kind of off of that. Parting shots here, John. Like, we're not talking betting, right, Les? Because again, we're betting. Like, we're not talking betting. Who wins this thing?
I think Brooks has the best chance to win this thing. I understand that Rory is a favorite and Scotty is unflappable. And odds are fairly representative of how they should be. I would take Brooks heads up over Rory this week. Scotty does give me concerns, but again, this is a course where the guys that Scotty is running circles around from tee to green can sort of close that gap. As long as you can hit a straight tee shot and you have the nerves to step up over a 200-yard approach shot into wind with regularity, it's a fair game, and I'll definitely take Brooks in a putting contest over Scotty if it comes to that. So I really think Brooks gets it done. I think this could be his second year where he gets multiple majors in a season, and he hasn't shown any indication of any like jinx in the armor for him. So I expect
Brooks
the top
Koepka,
10.
the official pick. All right, who you pick? Steven, again, we're not talking about odds or not whatever. Who's going to win?
I mean, Scotty's the most likely, but I'll call my shot here and say Ricky Fowler is going to win this Open. For all the talk,
love it.
For all the talk of Rory McIlroy winning at this course, ages ago, Ricky Fowler came in second in that same Open. He has shown he can play well here, and this resurgence of Ricky is not just some fad and weak fields. He has played legitimately top class golf, and finally got a win in a weaker field. But we've seen Ricky win a Players Championship in the most loaded field in golf at the time. He can win big events. I think he's playing amazing golf, and I think it all comes together here for him to contend. I'm calling my shot, Ricky Fowler.
I could cop out and say Scotty Scheffler here, and then like it would just be like, haha, whenever he does, and just be like, ha, you idiots. But no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'll go Vic. I think that he's been really, really close. Right? I mean, he's really, really close.
Yeah.
And you take a look at the stuff that we like this week. If we're talking about approach play, if we're talking about being long and straight, I mean, like that's what you get out of Vic. And I understand that there's much, a lot to be desired when it comes to kind of the short game stuff. But I think this course could, depending on how creative he wants to get, maybe could take some of that away from him. The stuff that he really, really hates, he can just get creative with some of these other clubs and stuff. And maybe that helps him out this week. So I'm going to say Vic finally gets it done here. And of course we will all be talking about this on Monday, and it'll be Scotty Scheffler. I mean, like, it's going to, it'll be Scotty Scheffler. Like, he's going to actually
be that
putt
mad. I mean,
he's going to putt to
yeah.
level, and that is going to have him win by 5 strokes. Or
yeah,
like it's going to be absurd. Like he's not even going to gain strokes. He's just going to putt level, and he's going to win by 5.
I'm in like the 230 person final on Underdog called the Albatross, and I have him like on the draft roster that I did. So if it helps me win $50K, I'm fine with Scotty Scheffler winning this tournament. So we'll see.
Good. We'll be rooting for you then, buddy. We will definitely be rooting for you along the way. Again, guys, as always, you can get our full cards over on the Discord, absolutely free, and head over to the lines. Listen, the best preview you're going to get in the business is written by John each and every week, so be sure and go over there and take a look at that before you make any of your bets, before you build any of your models. Listen, this was just our take on this. Maybe you get a different view. Maybe you get a different look at it. Maybe you want to put some different stats in there or weight things differently. So be sure and get all the information first and then go in and start doing
and get to the Discord, because I'm dropping a 29-1 top continental Europe placement here.
Secret pod play. There we go.
Get
secret
to the
pod
Discord.
play coming in over on the over on the Discord. So there it is. Secret pod play coming from Steven. For John, for Steven, I'm Matt. Good luck on all your Open Championship bets.